The stars shimmered like scattered diamonds across the vast darkness of space. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Dawn's Promise, watching the displays flicker with data from distant worlds. His ship was 3 weeks into a routine exploration mission when the distress signal came through. It was weak, almost lost in the cosmic noise, but it was there. Someone was calling for help. The bridge crew worked quickly to trace the signal. Dr. Mireille, the ship's medical officer and xenobiologist, came rushing from her lab when she heard the news. Her dark eyes studied the readings with concern. The signal came from Thalsaurus, an ocean moon in the neighboring star system. According to their database, a species called the Velnari lived there. Hyunwoo pulled up everything their computer had about the Velnari. There was not much information available. They were a reptilian species that lived mostly in water. They had discovered space travel only 50 years ago and had tried to join the Galactic Concordat, the big alliance that included 47 different alien species. But something had gone wrong. The application was rejected. No species would talk to them. No ships would visit their world. The distress signal repeated the same message over and over. Food supplies were running out. Their people were dying. They needed help. They had asked everyone, but nobody came. The Concordat had put a blockade around their entire star system. No ships in, no ships out. They were trapped and alone. Mirai looked at Hyunwoo with determination in her eyes. She had always believed that medicine and science should help everyone, no matter where they came from. Hyunwoo knew what she was thinking because he was thinking the same thing. They had to go and see what was happening. The journey to Thalsaurus took 2 days. As they approached the moon, they saw the blockade. 12 massive warships from the Avix Empire floated in formation around the moon. The Avix were the military power of the Concordat. Their ships were built for war, covered in weapons and armor. They looked like metal sharks waiting to strike. Hyunwoo opened a communication channel with the blockade commander. A tall figure appeared on the screen. The Avix had 4 arms and skin that looked like blue metal plates. Their eyes glowed with an orange light. The commander's name was Kresh, according to the translation software. Kresh's voice was cold and mechanical. He told Hyunwoo that the Velnari were a biological hazard. They carried a virus in their bodies that made other species very sick. The Concordat Council had voted to quarantine them. No contact was allowed. Hyunwoo should turn his ship around and leave immediately. But Hyunwoo was stubborn when it came to helping others. He told Kresh that he only wanted to assess the situation. As a human ship, they were not part of the Concordat military chain. They had the right to conduct humanitarian missions. Kresh did not like this answer, but after checking with his superiors, he allowed the Dawn's Promise to pass. He gave them 6 hours on the surface, no more. The landing site was near the largest Velnari city, a place built half underwater and half on floating platforms. As the shuttle descended, Mireille and her medical team prepared their equipment. Hyunwoo joined them, along with a security detail led by Lieutenant Tai-jin, a careful man who always planned for the worst. When they stepped out of the shuttle, the air was warm and humid. It smelled like salt and seaweed. The Velnari who came to meet them were remarkable creatures. They stood upright on 2 legs but had smooth, scale-covered skin that shifted between green and blue colors. Their hands had webbed fingers and their eyes were large and golden. When they spoke, it sounded like water running over smooth stones. The Velnari leader was an elder named Sratha. Despite the translation device, emotion came through clearly in his words. His people were desperate. They had built their civilization quickly after discovering advanced technology. Their population had grown, and their old ways of farming and fishing could not feed everyone anymore. They needed machines, supplies, and knowledge from other worlds. But the blockade had cut them off completely. Esratha explained what had happened. When the Velnari applied to join the Concordat, medical tests revealed something in their genetic code, a retrovirus that had evolved with them over millions of years. It was harmless to the Velnari themselves, but it caused terrible reactions in most other species. Fever, organ failure, sometimes death. The Concordat Council declared them too dangerous to contact. The Velnari had tried everything. Their scientists, including a young researcher named Tukavil, had worked day and night to find a cure or a vaccine. Nothing worked. The virus was too deeply woven into their biology. Removing it would mean changing what they were at the most basic level. It was impossible with their current technology. Mirai listened to all of this and asked if she could examine the medical data. Sratha took them to a research facility where Tikavil had set up his laboratory. The young Velnari scientist was tired and thin. He had not been sleeping or eating properly, too focused on finding a solution to save his people. Mirai spent 3 hours reviewing everything. She ran tests on samples, compared genetic sequences, and checked the data against human medical knowledge. What she found was both troubling and hopeful. The Velnari retrovirus was indeed dangerous. It had killed 3 Avix diplomats who had visited Thalsaurus during the first contact. Several other species had similar reactions, but humans were different. Earth had always been a world full of diseases and viruses. Humanity had fought through plagues, pandemics, and countless infections throughout their history. Their immune systems were tough and adaptable. Mirai's tests showed that humans could be around the Velnari with only minor medical preparations. Some simple vaccines and immune boosters would be enough. She told Hyunwoo her findings. He understood immediately what this meant. Humanity could help the Velnari when no one else could, but doing so would anger the Concordat. The Avix Empire might see it as a direct challenge to their authority. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for 30 years. They were still new, still trying to find their place among the older civilizations. This decision could have serious consequences. Hyunwoo looked at the Velnari people gathered outside the research facility. He saw families holding each other, children who looked thin and hungry, elders who had given up hope. They reminded him of old pictures from Earth's history, of refugees and outcasts who had nowhere to go. He made his decision. He contacted Earth's Unified Council through the faster-than-light communication system. He told them everything. He explained the situation, the danger, and the opportunity. Then he gave his recommendation. Humanity should offer the Velnari refuge. They should break the blockade and give these people a chance to survive. The response would take time to come back. Meanwhile, the 6 hours were almost up. Kresh was already sending messages demanding that the Dawn's Promise leave immediately. Hyunwoo asked Sratha to be patient just a little longer. Hope was something humans understood very well, and they were not going to abandon it now. The message from Earth took 12 hours to arrive. During that time, Hyunwoo kept the Dawn's Promise in orbit around Thalsaurus despite increasingly angry warnings from Admiral Kresh. The Avix commander threatened to open fire if they did not leave. Hyunwoo politely told him they were experiencing technical difficulties and needed time to make repairs. It was a thin excuse, but it bought them time. Down on the surface, Dr. Mirai continued her work. She had asked for volunteers among the Velnari to run more detailed tests. Hundreds came forward. They were willing to do anything that might help their people. Mirai worked with Tekfil and his team, sharing human medical knowledge and learning about Velnari biology. The more she learned, the more certain she became that humans and Velnari could live together safely. She met a young Velnari child named Islin during one of the medical screenings. The girl was curious and unafraid, asking questions about humans and Earth. Through the translator, she asked if humans lived in water like the Velnari did. Mirai smiled and explained that humans came from a world with both land and water, but they mostly lived on land. Iselin found this fascinating and sad at the same time. She said water was the best place to be. When the message from Earth finally came through, Hyunwoo gathered his senior officers in the conference room. Lieutenant Taejin was there, along with Mirai and the ship's chief engineer. They watched as President Sohee appeared on the screen. She was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and a face that had seen many difficult decisions. President Sohee explained that the Unified Council had debated for 10 hours straight. The arguments had been intense. Some council members wanted to follow Concordat rules and avoid conflict. They pointed out that humanity was still weak compared to the great galactic powers. Earth had only 30 colony worlds. The Concordat had thousands. A trade war or military conflict could destroy everything humans had built among the stars. But other council members had different views. They remembered Earth's own history of being outcasts and refugees. They talked about the times when humans had been divided, and how the worst moments in their past happened when people turned their backs on others in need. They argued that humanity's principles meant nothing if they only followed them when it was convenient. The vote had been close. Very close. In the end, President Sohee herself had cast the deciding vote. Earth would offer the Velnari refuge. They would evacuate as many as wanted to come to a human colony world called New Haven. It was outside Concordate space in a region that Earth had settled independently. The Velnari would be safe there, and humans would help them build a new home. There was more news, and it was not good. Ambassador Daejung, who represented humanity at the Concordate Council, had been expelled. The Concordate had voted to recall all human diplomats and cut official relations. Economic sanctions were being discussed. The Avix Empire had already announced they would no longer honor trade agreements with human worlds. President So-hee looked directly into the camera with firm eyes. She said that the cost would be high, but some things mattered more than money or political convenience. She said that humanity would be judged not by how they treated the powerful, but by how they treated the helpless. The Velnari deserved a chance, and Earth was going to give them one. Hyunwoo felt pride swell in his chest. This was why he had joined the exploration service. This was what humanity could be at its best. He immediately contacted Sratha and told him the news. The old Velnari leader's golden eyes filled with tears. He said something in his own language that the translator could not quite capture, but the emotion needed no translation. It was gratitude beyond words. The evacuation plan moved quickly into action. Earth mobilized an enormous fleet. 23 colony ships that were meant for human settlers were redirected to Thalsaurus. 15 massive cargo vessels came loaded with supplies and equipment. 8 military ships would serve as escorts, led by Commander Tae-jin, who was promoted and given his own command for the mission. Ships came from human colonies all across their sector of space. Volunteers signed up faster than the fleet could process them. Engineers, doctors, pilots, and ordinary people who wanted to help. Many had their own stories of being refugees or descended from refugees. They understood what it meant to be cast out. The Concordate did not sit quietly. Ambassador Daejung, now working from an independent human station, sent warnings. The Avix were reinforcing their blockade. More ships were arriving every day. Admiral Kresh had been given orders to prevent any evacuation by any means necessary. If the human fleet tried to break through, there would be a battle. On Thalsaurus, the Velnari prepared to leave their home. It was heartbreaking to watch. Sratha organized the evacuation priorities, children and their parents first, then the elderly, then everyone else. They could only take what they could carry. Their homes, their cities, their entire civilization built over thousands of years would be left behind. Tickville and his fellow scientists carefully packed their research and data. He told Mirai that he hoped to continue his work on New Haven, to find a complete cure for the retrovirus so that one day the Velnari could live among any species without fear. Mirai promised to help him. Human and Velnari scientists would work together. Young Iselin asked her parents if they would ever come back to Thalsaurus. Her father, a teacher named Vesmil, told her honestly that he did not know. Perhaps someday when the galaxy was different and more understanding. But for now, they would build a new life with the humans who had shown them kindness. When the evacuation fleet arrived, the sight was magnificent and terrible at the same time. 23 enormous ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Behind them came the cargo vessels and the military escorts. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled for a single mission. Every ship broadcast the same message in multiple languages. They had come for the Velnari, and they would not leave without them. Admiral Kresh responded immediately. The Avix blockade, now grown to 20 ships, moved to intercept. Kresh contacted Hyunwoo, who had been given overall command of the rescue operation. The Avix admiral's voice was hard as metal. He said the humans had one chance to turn back. If they proceeded, it would be considered an act of war against the Concordate. Hyunwoo looked at his bridge crew. He thought about the Velnari families waiting on the surface below. He thought about Iselin and her hopes for a future. He thought about what it meant to be human, to stand up when it would be easier to walk away. He opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the system, human and Avix alike. He spoke clearly and calmly. He said that humanity had not come to make war. They had come to save lives. The Velnari had committed no crime except being born different. They deserved the same chance at survival that every other species enjoyed. If the Avix wanted to stop them, they would have to fire first. Humanity would defend the innocent, but they would not strike first. The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Both fleets held position. Weapons were armed and ready. One mistake, one nervous trigger finger, and thousands would die. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see what would happen next. The standoff lasted for 3 hours. Both fleets remained in position with weapons ready. On Thalsaurus below, the Velnari waited in their ships and shelters, hoping that the humans who had promised to help them would not be destroyed trying to keep that promise. Commander Taijin commanded the military escort from his flagship, the Indomitable Will. He was a careful tactician who had studied every battle in human history. He knew his 8 ships could not defeat 20 Avix warships in direct combat. The Avix had better weapons, stronger shields, and more experience. But Taijin also knew that humans had won battles against larger forces before by being unpredictable and willing to take risks that others would not. He ordered his ships to spread out in a defensive sphere around the colony vessels. If the Avix attacked, the military escorts would draw fire away from the unarmed ships. It would likely mean their deaths, but it would give the colony ships time to evacuate people from the surface. Admiral Kresh watched the human formation with his glowing orange eyes. He was a soldier who followed orders, but he was not without thought. He had fought in 17 campaigns for the Concordat. He had seen many species and many wars. The humans were new to the galaxy, young and idealistic. He expected them to back down when faced with superior force, but they had not. They held position with calm determination. Something changed in that moment. A junior officer on one of the Avix ships made a mistake. A targeting system locked onto one of the human escorts automatically. It was a standard defensive protocol, nothing more. But the human ship detected the weapons lock and responded according to their own protocols. Suddenly, both sides were lit up with targeting indicators. A young human pilot named Ji-Wan was flying a fighter on patrol between the fleets. She saw what was happening. The computers on both sides were starting an automated response sequence. In seconds, weapons would fire automatically. The war would start not because anyone chose it, but because machines were doing what they were programmed to do. Ji-Wan made a decision in a fraction of a second. She flew her small fighter directly between the 2 fleets and shut down all her weapons systems. Then she broadcast on all frequencies, human and Avix. She said that she was unarmed and would remain between the fleets. If anyone fired, they would have to shoot through her first. She asked both sides to stand down and let the commanders talk. It was a crazy thing to do. One shot from either side would destroy her fighter instantly. But it worked. Both fleets paused. Kresh looked at this small human ship floating alone between his warships and the human fleet. He saw courage in the act, the kind of courage that soldiers recognized regardless of species. He ordered his weapon systems to stand down. Taijin did the same. He also made a note to both promote and discipline Ji-Wan later if she survived. For now, her reckless bravery had bought them time. Kresh opened a private channel to Hyunwoo. The Avix admiral spoke quietly, not broadcasting to his own fleet. He said that he had his orders and would follow them. But he also said that he had watched the humans carefully over the past days. He saw that they truly believed in what they were doing. They were not trying to challenge the Concordat's power or gain territory. They simply wanted to save lives. Kresh told Hyunwoo that he would contact his superiors and request clarification of his orders. It would take time for the message to travel and for a response to return. He suggested that the human fleet could begin evacuating the Velnari during that time. He would not interfere as long as the humans did not try to take anything else from Thalsaurus, only people. It was not a victory, but it was a chance. Hyunwoo accepted immediately. The colony ships descended to the surface while the Avix fleet watched but did not fire. Taijin kept the military escorts on high alert, ready to fight if the situation changed. The evacuation began in organized chaos. 23 massive ships landed on floating platforms around the Velnari cities. Each ship could hold 50,000 people. The Velnari came in orderly groups, carrying small bags with their most precious belongings. They walked up the loading ramps into ships built for humans, trusting these strange aliens from Earth with their lives. Dr. Mireille worked without rest, setting up medical stations on every ship. She trained human medical staff and Velnari helpers on how to treat each other. The vaccines she had developed were distributed to every human crew member. So far, they worked perfectly. No humans had gotten sick from contact with the Velnari. Young Iselin boarded a colony ship with her parents. She looked back at her home city one last time. The buildings were beautiful, built from coral and crystal that glowed in the sunlight. She wondered if she would ever see them again. Her mother held her close and told her that home was not a place but the people you loved. As long as they were together, they would be all right. Siratha was among the last to board. He stood on the shore and performed a traditional Velnari blessing, asking the ocean to remember his people and keep their city safe until they might return. Then he walked slowly up the ramp of the Dawn's Promise. Hyunwoo had insisted that the elder travel with him on the flagship. The loading took 6 days. It was the longest 6 days of Hyunwoo's life. Every moment he expected the Avix to receive orders to attack. Every time his sensors showed a ship moving, his heart raced. But Kresh kept his word. The Avix fleet watched but did not interfere. On the 6th day, the last Velnari boarded the last ship. More than 1 million people, almost the entire population of Thalsaurus, were now crowded into the human colony vessels. The ships were packed beyond their normal capacity. People would have to share cabins and sleep in shifts. It would be uncomfortable, but everyone would survive the 3-month journey to New Haven. Before they left, Tikvil asked permission to do something. He wanted to leave behind a message beacon on Thalsaurus. It would broadcast their story to any ship that came to the system. It would explain what had happened and thank the humans who saved them. Hyunwoo approved, and Tukvil set up the beacon in the largest city square. As the fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Kresh sent one final message to Hyunwoo. He said that orders had come from the Concordat. The humans were declared enemies of the Galactic Order. All trade agreements were cancelled. All human ships were banned from Concordat space. Any human found in Concordat territory would be arrested. The sanctions had begun. Kresh added something personal. He said that in his long military career he had followed many orders. Some he was proud of, some he was not. Today he was ordered to stop the humans from rescuing the Velnari. He had tried to follow those orders, but watching what the humans did, seeing their determination to help a people they had never met before, he found himself hoping they would succeed. He said that perhaps the Concordat had forgotten something important about why civilizations existed in the first place. Hyunwoo thanked him. He said that he hoped someday humans and Avix might meet again as friends rather than enemies. But for now, they had people to save and a long journey ahead. The fleet departed Thalsaurus in formation. The colony ships jumped to faster-than-light speed one by one, disappearing in flashes of light. The Avix fleet let them go. Ji-won, the young pilot who had placed herself between the fleets, was the last to leave. She saluted the Avix ships before her fighter jumped away. In the crowded corridors of the colony ships, humans and Velnari began the long process of learning to live together. The Velnari were amazed by human food, finding it strange but interesting. Humans were fascinated by Velnari music, which sounded like water flowing over rocks. Children from both species played together. Finding that laughter needed no translation, Esaretha and Hyunwoo spent long hours talking about their peoples and their worlds. The old Velnari leader wanted to understand why humans had risked so much for strangers. Hyunwoo tried to explain. He talked about Earth's history, about times when humans had turned away from those in need and the terrible consequences. He talked about the lessons his people had learned through pain and struggle. Esratha listened and understood. He said that the Velnari would never forget this gift. When they were strong again, they would stand beside humanity against whatever challenges came. The debt they owed could never be fully repaid, but they would spend their lives trying. The fleet arrived at New Haven 3 months after leaving Thalsaurus. During the journey, life aboard the crowded colony ships had settled into a routine. Humans and Velnari learned each other's languages and customs. They shared meals, stories, and hopes for the future. Friendships formed across the species barrier. Young Iselin had become fluent in Korean, learning from Dr. Murray during daily medical checkups. New Haven was a beautiful world. It orbited a yellow star similar to Earth's sun. The planet had vast oceans, tropical islands, and a warm climate perfect for the Velnari. The human colony there was small, only 200,000 people led by Governor Nam-su, a former admiral who had retired to farming. When he received word that over 1 million Velnari refugees were coming, he immediately organized the colony to welcome them. The landing was emotional. The Velnari stepped off the ships onto solid ground for the first time in 3 months. Many waded into the warm ocean waters of New Haven and cried with joy. The water was clean and full of life. It felt like home, even though they were thousands of light years from Thalsaurus. Governor Nam-su met with Siratha and Hyunwoo to plan the integration. The island chains of New Haven had plenty of room for everyone. The Velnari would build their cities on the coasts and in shallow waters, while humans expanded their settlements inland. They would share resources and technology, building a joint civilization. But news from the wider galaxy was troubling. The Concordat sanctions were severe and getting worse. Human colonies across space were cut off from trade routes. Prices for basic goods skyrocketed. Materials needed for advanced technology became impossible to obtain. Several human colonies reported food shortages as agricultural supplies ran low. On Earth, President Sohi faced intense political pressure. The opposition party, led by Councillor Yonseo, demanded that the Velnari be handed over to the Concordat immediately. Yonseo argued that humanity's survival was more important than helping aliens. She gave speeches showing pictures of human children going hungry because of the sanctions. She blamed the Velnari for all of humanity's current problems. Protests erupted in major cities on Earth and the larger colonies. Some people supported the decision to help the Velnari and called for everyone to endure the hardships together. But others carried signs demanding that the refugees be expelled. The human alliance was fracturing under the economic strain. President Sohi called an emergency session of the Unified Council. The vote was scheduled for 1 month away. If the council voted to surrender the Velnari, Earth's military would be ordered to take them from New Haven and hand them to the Concordat. Everything they had sacrificed would be for nothing. On New Haven, the Velnari saw the news broadcasts and understood what was happening. They were causing problems for the humans who had saved them. Saratha called a gathering of all Velnari leaders to discuss what they should do. Some suggested that they should offer to surrender themselves to spare humanity further suffering, but Tocqueville, the young scientist, had a different idea. Tocqueville proposed that the Velnari share all their technology and knowledge with humanity. The Velnari had developed advanced techniques that the Concordat did not possess. Their aquaculture systems could produce enormous amounts of food from ocean farms. Their bioengineering could create new materials without the rare elements that the Concordat controlled. Their telepathic communication technology could replace systems that required Concordat-produced components. The Velnari threw themselves into helping humanity. Engineers, scientists, farmers, and teachers worked alongside their human counterparts. Within weeks, the first Velnari human hybrid farms were producing food. New manufacturing facilities opened using Velnari biotech. The economy on New Haven began to stabilize and even grow. But the Concordat was not content to let humanity adapt. The Corrosian hives, insectoid creatures who served as the Concordat's intelligence service, sent agents to human colonies. These spies worked to increase tensions and turn humans against the Velnari. They funded protest groups and spread propaganda about the dangers of the Velnari retrovirus, lying that it could mutate and kill humans. On New Haven, a Corrosian agent called Silent Talon infiltrated the colony. His mission was to assassinate Saratha. The Corrosians believed that without their respected leader, the Velnari would fall into chaos and the human-Velnari alliance would collapse. Silent Talon was skilled and patient. He studied his target for weeks, learning patterns and routines. The assassination attempt came during a joint celebration between humans and Velnari. It was a festival to mark 6 months since the refugees had arrived on New Haven. Saratha was giving a speech thanking the humans and promising that the Velnari would prove worthy of the trust shown to them. Silent Talon was in the crowd with a weapon designed to look like he was a human who opposed the Velnari, but Hyunwoo's security detail was well trained. A young Velnari guard named Cressasan noticed something wrong about the human who was moving toward the stage. His movements were not quite right, his body language was off. Cressasan alerted the human security officers and they moved to intercept. Silent Talon realized he had been discovered. He drew his weapon and fired at Saratha. The elder Velnari was hit in the shoulder and went down. Immediately, both human and Velnari security personnel swarmed the assassin. It took 8 of them to subdue him. When they removed his disguise, they found a Kyrosian agent underneath. Dr. Mirai rushed to treat Saratha. The wound was serious but not fatal. While she worked, Lieutenant Tae Jin interrogated Silent Talon. The Kyrosian agent initially refused to talk, but he underestimated human and Velnari cooperation. Tocqueville had been studying Kyrosian biology and helped develop a truth serum that worked on their species. Under its influence, Silent Talon revealed everything. The Kyrosians had not just sent assassins. They had also manipulated the Concordat's first contact with the Velnari. Centuries ago, When the Velnari were just beginning to explore their own star system, a Corosian ship had visited Thalsaurus. The Corosians wanted to keep all water-rich worlds near their territory under their control. They had released a bioweapon that modified the Velnari retrovirus, making it deadly to other species. The Velnari were not naturally a biological hazard. They had been deliberately sabotaged to ensure they would be forever isolated. When the Velnari later applied to join the Concordat, medical tests showed the modified virus. The Concordat Council knew the truth about what the Kyrosians had done but suppressed the information. They needed Kyrosian support too much to risk a scandal. Dr. Mirai felt rage when she learned this truth. The Velnari had spent decades thinking they were cursed by nature, when in reality they had been the victims of a cold political calculation. She immediately began analyzing the virus, looking for evidence of the artificial modifications. Hyunwoo contacted Ambassador Dae-jung, who had been working undercover in Concordat space despite being officially expelled. Dae-jung had built a network of allies among the smaller species who felt oppressed by the major powers. When he heard about the Kyrosian conspiracy, he knew this was the evidence they needed. Dae-jung and his team broke into Concordat intelligence archives. It was extremely dangerous. If caught, they would be executed. But they managed to obtain classified files that confirmed everything Silent Talon had revealed. The files showed communications between Corosian leaders and Concordat Council members discussing how to keep the Velnari isolated. Dae-jung broadcast the evidence across the entire galaxy on every frequency and through every communication network he could access. Within hours, every species in known space had heard the truth. The Velnari were not a natural threat. They were victims who had been cast out by a conspiracy of the powerful. The reaction was explosive. Many species in the Concordat had their own grievances against the major powers. They had felt oppressed and voiceless for decades. Now they saw proof that the Concordat's leadership would lie, manipulate, and harm innocents to maintain control. 3 species immediately announced they were leaving the Concordat: the silicon-based Krentar, the bird-like Silthari, and the mammalian Vornak. They sent messages to Earth offering alliance with humanity. But the Avix Empire and the Kyrosian hives would not accept this challenge to their authority. They issued an ultimatum. Humanity had 30 days to surrender the Velnari and cease all resistance. If they refused, the full military might of the Concordat would invade human space. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Corvin system, and what they saw made even the most experienced officers pause. 3 massive bioships hung in orbit around the 4th planet, each one the size of a small moon. They were made of living tissue, pulsing with sickly bioluminescence, covered in tendrils and orifices that made them look like deep-sea creatures pulled from nightmares. "Those are the Skrell," Colonel Hyunwoo said from his position on the bridge of the warship Defiance. He had joined the Earth fleet as an advisor, bringing his 23 years of exile experience to help command. Admiral Taeyang studied the enemy through the view screen. Below the bioships, the colony world of Corvin Prime was already half consumed. The Skrell were converting the planet's surface into more of themselves, spreading like a cancer across the landscape. "All ships battle positions," Taeyang ordered calmly. "Authorization code Shin Alpha 7. Weapons free, engage at will." The human fleet moved forward in perfect formation. 1,200 ships organized into strike groups and support wings. The aliens watching from Axiom Prime through sensor relays had expected something resembling their own fleet tactics. Careful positioning, coordinated energy weapon volleys, defensive screens. What they got was pure human chaos. The first wave of ships accelerated to attack speed and simply rammed the nearest bioship. The impacts tore massive holes in the Skrell vessel's living flesh, and before it could regenerate, the second wave poured through the gaps, firing kinetic weapons and explosive missiles at point-blank range. There was no elegance, no careful strategy, just brutal, overwhelming violence. "Boarding teams away," reported Commander Soranam from her ship, the Vengeance. She led one of the assault groups, piloting a small craft directly into the wound torn in the bioship's side. Behind her came 200 Marines in armored suits, carrying weapons that would make any civilized species sick: flamethrowers, explosive charges, and chainsaws modified for zero-gravity combat. The Skrell tried to fight back. Tentacles lashed out at the human ships. Acidic projectiles sprayed across the void, and swarms of smaller bioforms launched from the larger vessels. But for every human ship destroyed, 2 more moved in. For every Marine that died, 3 more took their place. Minji Bayek, now serving as chief engineer on the flagship Horizon's Dawn, watched the sensor readouts with a mixture of horror and pride. This was war at its most fundamental level. Not the clean, distant battles the Assembly preferred, but close, personal, and absolutely savage. The Skrell bioships are trying to adapt, she reported to Taiyang. They're developing armor against our kinetic weapons. Then we switch tactics, Taiyang said without hesitation. Order all ships to deploy incendiary warheads. Burn them faster than they can adapt. The human fleet shifted weapons immediately, launching missiles filled with chemical fire that could burn in vacuum. The bioship screamed, if such things could scream, as flames consumed their living tissue. The sound came through the radio frequencies, a chittering wail that made everyone's skin crawl. Inside one of the bioships, Commander Sora led her Marines through passages made of pulsing flesh and strange bone-like structures. They planted charges as they went, timed to detonate simultaneously. The Skrell defenders were horrifying up close. Creatures assembled from parts of different species, biological horrors that should never have existed. But the Marines didn't hesitate. They had trained for 23 years for exactly this scenario. Charges set, Sora reported. Team extraction in 30 seconds. They fought their way back to their ships, leaving behind enough explosives to tear the bioship apart from within. As they cleared the blast zone, Sora gave the detonation order. The bioship convulsed, then exploded in a shower of organic matter and strange fluids. 1 down, 2 to go. The second bioship proved more challenging. It had learned from the first one's destruction and started deploying countermeasures. It released clouds of spores that clogged ship engines and corroded hull plating. It extended tentacles that could grab and crush human vessels. It even started to retreat, trying to escape into faster-than-light travel. Not today, Hyunwoo muttered. He had command of a fast attack squadron. Small ships designed for exactly this situation. All units target its FTL drives. Don't let it leave. The squadron dove in, dodging tentacles and spore clouds, firing precisely at the biological structures that generated the bioship's faster-than-light field. One by one, the drives failed and the Skrell vessel found itself trapped. Now hit it with everything, Hyunwoo ordered. The entire human fleet focused fire on the second bioship. Thousands of weapons, from the smallest railgun to the largest fusion torpedo, all converging on a single target. The bioship's adaptive armor couldn't keep up. It tried to regenerate faster, but the damage was too extensive. Within minutes, it was reduced to floating chunks of dead tissue. The third bioship tried to run immediately, but it was too slow. A group of human pilots did something the assembly commanders watching from afar couldn't believe. They strapped nuclear warheads to their own ships and flew directly into the bioship's core. The pilots ejected at the last second while their unmanned vessels detonated inside the enemy. The explosion lit up the Corvin system like a new sun, and when the light faded, the third bioship was gone. All enemy vessels destroyed, reported the tactical officer. We're reading no more Skrell presence in the system. Taeyang allowed himself a small smile. Recovery teams begin search for survivors. Medical ships, prepare to assist any colonists still alive on the planet. Engineering teams get those damaged vessels back to fighting shape. We move to the next target in 6 hours. Across the galaxy on Axiom Prime, the Assembly Council watched the battle footage in stunned silence. They had expected the humans to fight, maybe even to win eventually. But they hadn't expected this level of effectiveness, this willingness to sacrifice, this absolute refusal to accept any outcome except total victory. They destroyed 3 bioships in under 2 hours, Velthar said, his voice barely above a whisper. Our best fleets couldn't destroy one in 3 days. They fight like animals, said one of the other council members, disgust clear in their voice. They fight like survivors, Dr. Hanachoy corrected. She had stayed on Axiom Prime to serve as liaison between Earth and the Assembly. You wanted peace so badly you forgot how to win wars. We never had that luxury. Earth made us fight for everything we have, and then you locked us in a cage for 23 years. We used that time to prepare for the worst. Congratulations, you created exactly the weapon you were afraid of. Over the next 3 months, the human fleet moved through the galaxy like a storm. They hit every Skrell position they could find, using tactics that made the Assembly uncomfortable but couldn't argue with. Ramming attacks, suicide runs, biological weapons designed to specifically target Skrell tissue. And worst of all, the practice of capturing enemy bioforms and studying them to develop better countermeasures. "This is barbaric," complained one assembly member after watching footage of humans dissecting a captured Skrell creature. "There are conventions about treatment of enemies." "The Skrell don't follow conventions," Taeyang replied coldly during a strategy meeting. "They convert entire populations into biological weapons. They absorb technology through consumption. They don't take prisoners and they don't negotiate. You want us to fight them with one hand tied behind our backs because it makes you comfortable? Then you can go back to losing this war by yourselves." The assembly didn't complain again. Minji Beck became known as the adaptation engineer for her ability to design new weapons and countermeasures in real time during battles. She would watch the Skrell adapt to human tactics, then immediately develop new approaches. Her innovations saved thousands of lives and turned several battles that seemed lost into victories. Commander Sora led boarding action after boarding action, earning the nickname the Reaper among both human and alien forces. She had personally destroyed more bioships from the inside than any other officer in the fleet. Colonel Hyunwoo coordinated the overall strategy, using his understanding of galactic geography from years in exile to predict where the Skrell would strike next. His tactical predictions were right more often than not, allowing the human fleet to be in position before the enemy arrived. And Admiral Taeyang Shin directed it all with the cold precision of someone who had spent 2 decades preparing for this exact war. He made the hard decisions, ordered the necessary sacrifices, and kept the fleet moving forward even when losses were heavy. Finally, after 6 months of constant fighting, they located the source, the Skrell Overmind. It was a biostructure the size of a small moon, hidden in an ancient nebula beyond the galactic rim. This was where all the Skrell consciousness originated, where every bioship and creature was controlled from. "Destroy that," Velthar said during the strategy session, "and the entire Skrell force collapses." "But it's protected by thousands of bioships," another council member pointed out. "Even the human fleet can't fight through that many." Taeyang studied the sensor data for a long moment. Then he pulled up a schematic that made everyone in the room go silent.